A hush fell over the assembled species in the Grand Assembly Hall of Ziria, a myriad of forms and minds that had long ruled the cosmos in a coalition of power. The ornate doors at the end of the chamber swung open ceremoniously, allowing a lone figure to enter and go inside. Captain Elias Holt, the human envoy. He walked purposefully towards the central dais where the council convened. As a new species, humans were viewed with a mixture of curiosity and caution, but the air around him hummed intensity. He was dressed in the Earth's Galactic Navy's standard issue uniform, with its insignia catching the surrounding light. But it wasn't his sharp appearance that caught people's attention. Rather, it was the unwavering resolve carved into his features. Without ceremony or preamble, he spoke, his voice cutting through the silence as esteemed leaders of the Zidian Council. He started out with a measured tone that was tinged with steel. Humanity has watched and waited while our outposts on the periphery of your territories have suffered. We have come to you in a time of peace, and again seeking only a sliver of the vast universe you claim as your dominion in return. Our overtures of diplomacy have been met with aggression. Our patience has been mistaken for weakness, have been harassed, our ships attacked, and our sovereignty challenged. Now the council members exchanged glances. There were whispers, a soft cacophony against the heavy stillness that Holt's words had wrought. Council, he said, my worlds will burn. The flames will not consume the innocent, but they will ignite the skies of those who dare to oppress us. This sent a tumultuous wave of reactions as Holt turned on his heel. His message delivered, and he left as he had promised. His next words were not a plea, but a cold ultimatum from a species pushed to the brink. I stand before you today, not to bargain, not to beg, but to inform humanity will not be hunted, cornered arrived by themselves, leaving the Zidian Council in chaos. The spark had been lit, and the human fleet, led by Admiral Hawk, was waiting for Holt to return. They were ready to put an end to the conflict, but they would not start one. Captain Elias Holt's return to the human fleet brought with it a sense of impending change. The hallways of the flagship Vindicator hummed with an electric tension. Admiral Hawk looked over his crew, their faces displaying a mixture of anticipation. The Vindicator, a leviathan of space, was delivered, and now it was time to act. Its angular design spoke of past battles and victories etched into its steel memory. In the quiet of the command center, the ship's core hummed like the heartbeat of some massive sleeping beast. Now awake, Hawk turned to his assembly of officers. The Zians, he announced, view our resolve as a bluff, mistaking our diplomatic efforts for a peaceful existence. Overtures as evidence of weakness. We will remind them that conflict and fire were the source of humanity's creation. The plan was audacious, a series of well-thought-out strikes that would negate Zidian power without causing significant bloodshed. Hawk was not one to welcome conflict, but he would not back down from it either. We would begin by severing the head, he declared, his gaze piercing the communication satellites orbiting Zia's moon. The officers nodded and proceeded to their stations with a purpose that had been refined by intense training and unwavering. Companionship, the crew of the Vindicator, and the supporting ships prepared for deployment. Each vessel was shrouded in the shadow of nebula and cosmic dust. A quiet confidence settled over Hawk. This was the human way to face the unknown with a steady eye and an unwavering spirit. The mission required precision. There was no room for error. The satellite network was the linchpin of Zidian control over their outlying territories. Without it, their response would be sluggish and confused, a weakness to be exploited. The storm was gathering its epicenter at the very heart of human defiance, and it would break upon the stars with a fury that would be remembered as the fleet moved into position. Hawk's final words echoed in the minds of his crew. Let us show them the strength of our resolve for Earth. The first wave of ships blinked out of the Vindicator's shadow, slipping into the vast expanse with a silence that belied their deadly intent. Their worlds would not burn under an oppressor yoke. Around the Zidian defenses, the humans then deployed EMP mines, temporarily disabling the ion cannons, and landed troops directly onto the hub. This was the moment of first contact that history would remember, not with a handshake, but with a display of strength as the Zidian armada cruised through the void, their warships formidable against the backdrop of deep space, oblivious to the eyes tracking their every move. For humanity, we light the dark. The human fleet, draped in the shadow of an asteroid belt near the Kren space, lay in silent ambush. Captain Elias Holt, his eyes reflecting the starlight, oversaw the operation from the command deck of the frigate Indomitable. Adrift, Holt prevented the Zidian ships from being affected by the synchronized salvo of electromagnetic pulses that released the Indomitable Resolute and the cloaked ships of its flotilla. The crew, who had experienced numerous skirmishes on the frontier, stood ready for the signal to initiate the pulse. Hold ordered his voice. The Zidian ships found themselves powerless, their lights flickering out and their engines dying. The ambush had gone perfectly. Without hesitation, he sent out boarding parties. Pods, each carrying a team of soldiers dressed in powered armor, shot out from the Indomitable's bays and landed on the enemy ships like metallic seeds carried by a tempest. Holt watched the operation play out on his screens as reports came in. The human soldiers swept through the Zidian ships with precision, meeting resistance, but easily defeating the bewildered defenders in a matter of hours. They had commandeered the fleet. Colt couldn't help but think about the future. The Zians would want retribution, but now that humanity had established first contact and gained the upper hand, Holt knew it was only the beginning. The seizure of the Zidian armada would serve a purpose far greater than a mere show of might. Among the captured vessels were those carrying the latest in warp drive technology, a prize that could turn the tide in humanity's favor. Engineers started working to uncover the secrets of the alien propulsion systems. The message it sent to the galaxy was that humanity was no longer the underdog in this cosmic game. The rules had changed, and they could prove it with the captured Zian fleet. The Zian's war fleet charged towards Nuda, the human colony that served as a beacon of civilization on the outer rim. Captain Elias Holt, who had returned to terra firma, oversaw the defenses of the colony from the Strategic Command Center. And even though Nuda was teeming with life and activity, it was not unprepared for the storm that approached the Zian fleet. The first Zidian troops arrived to find not an open welcome of a vulnerable colony, but a fortress bristling with readiness because the humans had laid a network of defensive perimeters. With a ferocity that turned day into night, their ships blotted out the sun as they prepared to unleash their fury. Holt, known for his calm demeanor even in the face of imminent danger, issued his orders with precision, preparing all ground units and activating the orbital defense ring. His voice cut through the mounting tension like a knife. Drone patrols and mines that turned the terrain into a lethal chessboard. The Zians, although surprised by the fierce resistance, pressed forward with their assault, but every step they took was met with resistance. Every advance was met with artillery fire, sniper fire, barges, and ambushes. Holt had turned the residential areas and industrial complexes into a maze of death traps, making the most of the colony's strong infrastructure to the fullest extent possible. The battle for New Terra raged on the colony, echoing with despite the sounds of battle and the harsh alien orders of the Zidian officers. The human defenders stood their ground because they were determined to defend their home and loved ones. Holt, who was keeping an eye on the situation from his command post, saw an opportunity, and frustrated by the unexpected resistance that had exposed their flank, he immediately ordered a counteroffensive. In a display of tactical brilliance, the humans encircled the main Zidian battalion, cutting them off from their ships. This marked the turning point. By dawn, the remnants of the Zidian forces were either in full retreat or captured. The humans had not only successfully defended Nuwa, but had done so with a strategic acumen that stunned their enemies. The victory was celebrated, but it was also a somber one. The humans launched a decisive strike against the Zidian command ship under the cover of night. Special forces led by Holt himself infiltrated the vessel, taking control and capturing its crew. As the sun rose over the damaged but still vibrant colony, Captain Holt stood proudly and thoughtfully among his people. a reminder of the high cost of such a conflict. He knew that this was only one chapter in a story that was far from over, and that the fight for humanity's place in the stars would continue, with him at the forefront, leading with courage and an unwavering spirit, following the defense of Nuwa Captain Elias. It was time to take the fight to the center of Zidian power in the strategy room of the Sovereign. Potential targets flickered with cold light as Hawk pointed to a remote system that was home to the Zidian Warp Gate Technology Hub. "That's our next move," he declared, tapping the hologram where the gates glittered like jewels. Holt returned to space to join Admiral Hawk aboard the command ship Sovereign. The victory on New Terra had given humanity not only a morale boost, but also valuable Zidian technology. Control the warp gates, we control their movements, effectively crippling their ability to wage war effectively. Holt nodded in agreement, realizing the gravity of the mission, that taking control of the warp gates would grant them access to deeper territories, as well as a strategic advantage, both of which are critical to their long-term success. The human fleet, now enhanced by warships that were commandeered from Zidian and outfitted with cutting-edge technology, set a course for the warp gate hub. As they traveled through the warp stream, tension increased among all members of the crew. Arriving aware of the impending battle, they discovered that the Zidian defenses were strong but not unbeatable. The hub was guarded by a network of dead ion cannons and a fleet of warships. The human fleet, on the other hand, was ready and used a series of feints to entice some of the Zidian fleet away from the gates and divide their forces. With the enemy partially distracted, Holt led the strike team in a valiant frontal assault on the main hub. The battle was intense, with the sound of energy weapons filling the void of space. After hours of fierce fighting, the hub fell into human hands. The control room, which housed a complex array of alien technology, was now under human control. As the soldiers in the control room maneuvered through the onslaught of enemy fire, their ships created a dance of death. The capture of the Warp Gate hub was a turning point in the war. It allowed the human forces to disrupt Zidian reinforcements and gave them a foothold deeper in enemy territory. As news of the victory spread across human-controlled space, it bolstered the human forces' victory. A surge of triumph as they secured the area, secured the perimeter, and began integration protocols. Holt ordered his voice resolute amid the chaos. While the war was far from over, they were aware of the challenges ahead and planned their next moves accordingly. Nevertheless, the tide had turned, and they were determined to press on, driven by their strategic dominance and the fact that they now controlled the Warp Gate hub, which allowed them to control it. Captain Elias Holt and Admiral Hawk also set their sights on deeper strategic penetrations into Zidian. The next stage of their campaign was a bold invasion of the Zidian homeworld, employing their own Warp Gate technology against them. From the Sovereign Holt Command Center, they coordinated with fleet captains and ground commanders, outlining the strategy that would take advantage of their new advantage. We disrupted their movements and communications, and now we strike right at the heart, highlighting the humanity's reach and resolve. The operation began with a series of feints across other sectors too. As they emerged from the Warp Gate near the Zidian homeworld, the stark beauty of the alien planet loomed before them. It was a world of vast oceans and sprawling land masses crowned with cities that glowed with a bioluminescent hue. But this mission bore no time for admiration. The stakes were too high that the task force's arrival went smoothly. Meanwhile, a select task force led by Holt in a newly refitted Zidian cruiser approached the homeworld sector through the Warp Gate network close aid in stealth. Human forces launched a surprise attack on several military outposts on the outskirts of the main Zidian city. The assaults were precise, aiming to but not annihilate to minimize casualties while demonstrating power. Holt LED, one of the ground teams personally ensuring the objectives were met. They positioned themselves strategically, preparing for a coordinated strike, thanks to the Zidian technology they had commandeered. All units switched to silent running. Holt commanded, "Prepare for synchronized assault on my mark in a quick operation." Human forces quickly secured the outposts, capturing valuable intelligence and further technology. Holt's team moved deeper into the infrastructure, planting disruption devices that would incapacitate the planetary defenses. When the final device was activated, a ripple of disruption spread, effectively blinding the Zidian response. The surprise was complete. The Zidian, so accustomed to superiority and control, found themselves reeling under the onslaught of an enemy that had not only used but also mastered their technology. With the main objective secured, Holt signaled for all units to withdraw to extraction points. The withdrawal was as quick as the assault, with all human forces returning to the warp gate before the Zidians could launch a significant counterattack back aboard the Sovereign. The atmosphere was one of subdued celebration as they had successfully breached the heart of the Zidian Empire. Admiral Hawk praised the troops, especially Holt, whose leadership on the mission's success marked a turning point and sent a clear message to the Zians and any other potential aggressors that humanity was not just surviving, but also asserting itself as a formidable force in the galaxy. Although the path ahead was still dangerous, for now they had earned a brief moment of respite and a victory. The ground was pivotal. The breach today wasn't just about the physical barriers we overcame. Holt reflected as he debriefed with Hawk. Significant psychological victory with the breach into Zidian territory, marking a pivotal victory. Humanity's focus shifted towards a decisive action that could bring the war to a potential end. Captain Elias Holt and Admiral Hawk strategized over the final move, a controlled display of might on the Zidian home world itself. From the bridge of the Sovereign, Holt observed the planet below its surface, now a chessboard on which the next move was critical. We're not here to destroy, but to demonstrate, Holt reminded his crew of 1847. Sternly, the goal was to execute a precise orbital bombardment on unpopulated areas to show the Zians the full extent of human capabilities without causing civilian casualties. Ad hoc coordinated the fleet, positioning each ship for maximum impact target, the desolate terrains away from urban centers. I want shock and awe, not a bloodbath. He commanded the fleet's artillery was calibrated, targeting geological fault lines and uninhabited regions that would display visible effects from space as the ships aligned. When the dust settled, the effects of the brief but intense bombardment were immediately apparent. Great plumes of smoke rose into the sky, and the ground glowed with the heat of the impacts. However, it was the psychological impact that was most noticeable. Holt gave the order, and beams of concentrated energy descended from the heavens, striking the planet with precision. Each pit was calculated to avoid loss of life, but to create a spectacle visible through the planet's atmosphere. Most importantly, Holt opened a channel to the Zidian leadership, who was now fully aware of how vulnerable their position was. This was a demonstration of our capabilities, and Holt's voice echoed through the channel, firm and clear. Consider this a warning. We can obliterate your military capabilities without setting foot on your soil. We urge you to reconsider your stance against humanity. The response was a mixture of shock and dismay. Tense discussions with the Chinese, wary of further aggression, but also respectful of the newfound power humanity wielded as the treaty was drafted, ensuring the security of human rights. Chinese commanders, faced with the reality of their precarious situation, entered negotiations. The Huan fleet remained in orbit, a silent guardian as talks began. Holt stood as a representative of Earth's military strength, while diplomats from various human colonies articulated the terms of peace. As he watched the sunset over another world, hopeful yet vigilant, aware that peace, while fragile, offered a chance to heal, Holt felt a heavy burden slightly lessen. The war appeared to be nearing its end, not with the destruction of a world, but with a show of strength that promised peace through power. Holt knew the galaxy would never be the same after the events. Humanity had staked its claim not just to survive, but to thrive and command respect. They watched the signing of the peace agreement via a live transmission from the negotiation chamber on the planet's surface. The treaty was a complex tapestry of clauses and promises ensuring mutual non-aggression and the establishment of trade routes and cultural exchanges for the Zians. As the dust of the Ziana homeworld settled, the treaty terms were finalized and agreed upon, marking an unprecedented turn in human galactic relations. Captain Elias Holt, weary but resolute, stood beside Admiral. The final signatures were inked, and applause erupted across the Sovereign's bridge, echoing in ships and stations across Hfi-controlled space. This was a triumph tempered by the gravity of their newfound responsibilities, but for Holt, the victory was bittersweet, as he watched as the once bossed and fierce leaders of Zidiana acknowledged their new place in the universe. Captain Holt Admiral Hawk turned to him and nodded solemnly. "Carried out more than just leading missions. You've helped shape our destiny." Holt nodded, feeling the weight of every choice and command that had brought them this far. "Thank you, Admiral." In the days that followed, Holt participated in the victory celebrations held on New Terra, where he was praised as a hero. However, amidst the fanfare, his thoughts were with those who had not lived to see this peace. He visited the memorials erected for the fallen there. In the heat of battle, trade flourished, former battlegrounds became meeting places, and names were etched in stone and memory. The war had changed humanity. From the ashes of conflict, a new civilization was ready to rise, one that would no longer hide in the shadow of other galactic powers. Captain Holt eventually returned to the Sovereign, and from the observation deck, looked out into the vastness of space. The stars seemed different now, not just points of light, but places of... As he readied himself for his upcoming assignment, Holt realized his place in the wider cosmos. Although peace might be ephemeral, it exists, and it was up to him and others like him to maintain it. Humanity had sent a message across the stars emphasizing not only strength, but also resilience and a readiness to defend the future they were building. The Zians, now allies, would learn from humans, and humans would learn from them collectively as they explored the possibilities of peace. Captain Elias Holt gazed out at the starry expanse, a silent defender of the peace he had helped forge, prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead under a sky no longer filled with war, but with the quiet whisperers of potential. And while the universe remained a vast and occasionally dangerous place, for now it held more promise than peril.